Hello. We're going to walk through some more technical packs. So this is another example. This is a technical pack by a student at the University of South Wales. This is from her first year. She's now on her sandwich placement out in the industry, called Beth and Jones. So let's take a stroll through, and I'll point out some bits where some good practice, but also some bits where the student could improve. So of course this is all done with the permission of the student, and if you want to follow her on Instagram, you can click the link in the description. So let's take a look. We've got Beth and Jones Technical Specification Pack. Now, again, I would probably suggest a little bit of a more exciting name than that, but, fair enough. So we have the name of a collection here. We have a garment name. We have a style number, so you can see this looks like it's the third in a series, and then the sample size here. So we have our technical specification drawing, and she's used a contrast fabric. So she's given us a bit of a key here. And of course, this is good that it can be done in black and white, so that if it were to be printed off in a place that, say, didn't have color printing, it's really easy to see. We have our measurements here, and if we zoom in, okay, we can start to see we've got our top stitching, our visible stitching here, our visible zip. Now, one thing that I would suggest is that we draw the back of the neck. So what's happening on the inside of that neckline is that a facing, by the looks of things, there's no visible stitching, so it might be facing, although if we jump on the back, we've got some visible stitching here. So looking at that on the inside is the way to go. One type of best practice here is how the student has kind of described this area. Now, this is a bit of a tricky situation on this garment. So there was actually a void in the back of the garment, so a hole in the back of the garment that's designed to kind of let air flow and things like that. Now, it's a tricky situation. So do you, for example, as the student's done a close-up view and indicated that it is a void and how to finish off the edge, or do you draw the inside of the garment from the reverse? That's totally up to you, as long as it's very clear to the person looking at your work. Let's take a look at the specification sheet for the fabric. So this is 100% cotton. You can see that. Again, probably look at the trade name for that fabric. But this happened to be a parachute from the 1960s. This is a sustainable fashion range. This happened to be... So let's take a look at the fabric specification sheet here. You can see that the fabric name is cotton. Now, I'd probably think of a trade name or a different name for that, but there we go. We're looking at the fiber content here, the meterage, and the reference number. Now, this happened to be a parachute, an ex-military parachute from the 1960s, so difficult to find some supplier information there. And we've got a reclaimed parachute, donated, available meterage. Now, what I'd probably recommend for something like this, because it is reclaimed, is perhaps almost like a mini lay plan showing where the fabric was harvested from on the original piece. Okay, let's look at, here we go. Now we're looking at, again, we've got a contrasting fabric, so we're always looking at a different fabric specification sheet for every fabric. Oh dear. So we have our nylon. Now, of course, Beth here has unfortunately gotten the name wrong. So this is a rip stop nylon, not a rip stock. So it's a type of nylon that's designed not to rip, hence the name rip stop. So this is a nylon. We probably want a bit more information in there, maybe something to do with the construction type, or make sure that we have the fiber contents correct. And of course, so usual donated, reclaimed parachute. And again, this is actually a different shaped parachute than the last one. The last one was a circular parachute, and this one is a rectangular one. So the little mini lay plan would make a difference there. Okay. Now, what Beth's done for her pre-production or her order of assembly is, and again, all of the same details as we've seen before, is really start from the beginning. So you can see the first thing we're using is cutting out all the pattern pieces. Ensure to mark all the notches. Now, if you're handing this over to a factory, that's pretty well. They don't need that information. They can do all that. But if you're thinking about it for yourself, or for maybe small batch production, there's stuff in there that we are kind of giving the producers some tips to make sure that they don't forget stuff. Now, for a garment like this, there's lots of notches. So some information just reminding the person cutting it out, like, hey, don't forget all the notches. Great idea. Okay, we've got our suggesting here that they're drawing the designs for the applique. ensure that they use fadeaway pen or tailor's chalk. So all that kind of stuff is great information all the way through. Now you see what Beth's done is she's done things like break it down with subheadings into the different categories, so you can kind of jump to those categories. Great idea for a gum like this. Okay, what has she said here? Okay, so this is her lay plan. We can see this is her parachute fabric. It's lay 1. We've got our measurements here. So this is a segment out of a circular parachute. You can see it's a triangular style shape. Now, looking at how the grain line on this on these pattern pieces are going, they seem a bit all over the place. I would suggest that the grain line for this piece of fabric ran this way. But it may not be the case, but it certainly wouldn't run in 2 different directions. Okay, so she's marking how it'll be produced. Okay, so we're on to the lay plan now. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Excellent. So what she's got our same information that we saw earlier. Parachute fabric lay plan 1. This is the pink fabric we saw earlier. Now this all looks correct. We've got our width and our length. Effectively, this is a triangular piece cut out of a circular parachute. So if you think each of these triangular pieces is a bit like a segment in an orange to create that circle. The thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is her use of her grain lines. So we've got a grain line running this way and a grain line running this way, which is probably not possible for the piece of fabric that she's got. I would probably suggest that the grain would either run this way or it'd run this way. So either north-south or east-west. So I'd probably want to check that was laid out in the correct way. Now what she's done is that she has marked on the garment which fabric is for which section, although she hasn't actually said which section is which. So for example, we've got A equals the outer layer. That makes sense. But do we know that this is A, this could be B, this could be C? So all more information needed there. Okay. So this is her middle layer, lay plan 2. Now again, 80 centimeters by 2 meters. Okay, but we don't know what fabric this is. 1 meter used. So this may be the same fabric as the one up above, in which case we should have a different shaped lay plan, or it may be a completely different fabric. Let's take a look what we've got for our next one. Okay, well, that's all we have for that particular one. So, the lay plan looks like it's lacking, but we don't know. So if looking at a lining, what is that fabric? Is it the same as A? Looking at, if we just scroll all the way back to the top, so there are our 2 fabrics. One of those is going to be the outer layer, one of those is going to be lining. But looking at this fabric here, it suggested, because we've got a contrast fabric, it's made of two types of fabric only. Let's go back to our lay plan. We've got an arm, a sleeve, a front and a back, or maybe that's 2 fronts, or they're the fronts and they're the backs. Worth doing some analysis on. And then we have our sleeve, a back, and 1 front, which seems very odd. So, some work needing to be done there. Thanks very much.